I know you have a specific breathing pattern that is associated with a calmer mind. Can you teach it to us?
I love it so much. It's the 15-second breath. So if you're having a panic attack, this is going to fix it in 2 minutes or less. And what researchers discovered is you take twice as long to breathe out as you breathe in. It produces an automatic relaxation response in your body. So the pattern is this, and it's 4 seconds in,
Okay.
hold it for a second and a half, 8 seconds out, hold it for a second and a half.
Will you walk us through it?
So 4 seconds in, hold it, 8 seconds out. Hold it out. And then repeat. And I have an app called Happy Brain, HAPI Brain, and actually has a pacer that does that for you. And all you have to do is when you see the circle get bigger, breathe in. When you see it get smaller, breathe out. And it's so simple. And try to breathe more diaphragmatically or more with your belly. So let the energy of breathing go lower in your body. And if you just practice this on a regular basis, cortisol will go down. And you're just going to get flooded with a feeling of calmness and relaxation. Now you got to practice. You have to create a pathway in your brain of relaxation.
Why does this 15-second breath work?
Because it stimulates, encourages your brain to go into a parasympathetic state. So there's a difference between stress, what scientists call sympathetic state, has nothing to do with sympathy. It's a bad word. But a sympathetic state is where I was on the beach at Corona del Mar walking my dog, and I saw two pit bulls running toward me.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, right? So my heart went fast. I mean, it was panic, and ended up turning out okay. But
well, what happened? Now I'm on the edge of my seat. Did you pick up your dog? Did they just jump up?
Oh no, he's a big white shepherd, and I got bit. He ended up in the ocean. Yeah, it was sort of a disaster. I still get triggered sometimes, which we should talk about a little bit, because in my elite brain training program, it is critical to eliminate trauma, or at least to learn how to dissipate trauma. Because I love walking on that beach so much. So I actually did a session of EMDR. I don't know if you and I talked about EMDR.
Yep.
It's specific psychological treatment for trauma. It's actually really cool. It is, you know, I have my patients write down 10 of their worst traumas. And then through a specific protocol, I'll have their eyes go back and forth while they bring it up, and it tends to help dissipate it. It's very powerful. Or when I go on that beach now, I'll often find myself doing this.
And what you're doing is rubbing your hands back and forth.
Right. And it's bilateral hemisphere stimulation in my brain, right? I feel it on one side, then the other side. And that just takes the anxiety that I might associate to that beach and washes it away, which can be so helpful. So many people, they drink to manage their anxiety from past trauma. They're using marijuana, now more magic mushrooms. And I'm like, no. There are way better ways to do that are not potentially toxic for your brain.
Wow. Well, we're going to have to come back and do a whole nother episode on that for sure. How do you calm a very busy brain?
So the first simple thing to do is the diaphragmatic breathing, the breathing pattern that we just talked about. The second thing that we haven't talked about, but so important, is to direct your thoughts. I was 28 years old before I learned I didn't have to believe every stupid thing I thought. And I'm in class when I was a psychiatric resident at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center. And I heard my professor say that. And I'm like, no way. Because my mind would fairly torture me. You know, I'm one of 7 children. I was pretty much irrelevant. I have, 5 sisters. There's a lot of chaos in my family. And my mind would torture me. And if you start writing down your negative thoughts and just ask yourself whether or not they're true. And there's a whole process I teach my patients. It's just so helpful that I need to be the director of my mind rather than my ancestors directed, or the voices of my parents directed, or the news, or the gossip at work. I need to be the director. And since I want to be happy, connected, purposeful, I often go, well, does this thought fit me being happy, connected, and purposeful? And Mel, just because you have a thought has nothing to do with whether or not it's true or whether or not it's helpful. Or, everybody has crazy thoughts. Jerry Seinfeld once said the brain is a sneaky organ. All of us have weird, crazy, stupid, sexual, violent thoughts that nobody should ever hear. And just because you have a thought, it doesn't say one thing about you. It's just sort of, like the weather. It's not the thoughts you have that make you suffer. It's the thoughts you attach to that make you suffer. And when you really understand this, so we talked about the physical functioning of your brain. Well, now we're talking about programming.
Yeah, let's stop real quick because I want to ask you a question. Because I want you to talk to the person that has never considered that they could direct their thoughts, or that the things that they think aren't necessarily true. If there's a person hearing this, just like you were 28 years old, sitting in a class when it first entered your mind, other than taking out a notebook and just start to write down the things that are popping in your mind, is there some other way to help someone kick the door open? Because this is a revolutionary and life-changing concept when somebody first entertains the notion, Dr. Amen, that you can direct what you're thinking about and you can dismiss some of the crap that you torture yourself with as untrue. How do you begin this mental training and reprogramming?
So I don't have any tattoos, but if I got one of the first tattoos I would get is it true? It's just start carrying that question around true? In your head. And so when you get a thought, my wife never listens to me. I've had that thought. If you have that question, then you don't automatically have to attach to it. You can talk back to it. I don't know if you were good at talking back to your parents when you were a teenager, but I was excellent. And no one had ever taught me to talk back to myself. And so we don't have to believe the nonsense that's going on in our head. Just sort of begin to think about it like the weather, and then go, does this thought serve me? Does it help me? Is it even true? And it's so often the lies we tell ourselves that keep us overweight, depressed, and feeble-minded. And it's a revolution, I think, all second graders. I actually have a children's book called Captain Snout and the Superpower Questions, where I teach kids not to believe every stupid thing they think. I call them ants, automatic negative thoughts. So you need a little anteater patrolling the streets.
I have a question about a couple things that you said. I didn't want to interrupt you, but you said that breathing in and out of your nose increases the amount of oxygen versus breathing, out of your mouth. Why does that matter?
Well, I think it's very important. Oxygen is really, it's the fuel for the human being. And if, for example, we are not getting enough oxygen delivery to the brain, if there's insufficient blood flow or oxygen delivery, it can increase brain cell excitability. So brain cells become more excitable. We're thinking more. We're more prone to anxiety. I remember writing a book back in 2010 called Anxiety Free. And I spoke about this paper that was published in 1988. And the paper said that the brain, by regulating breathing, regulates its own excitability. And then I was listening to a podcast by the neuroscientist, Dr. Andrew Huberman, about 2 months ago. And he cited the exact same statement and sentence. And it's funny how things come around, but this is the importance of breathing and the importance of knowing how to breathe right. If, for example, we are breathing the way you described during the introduction, and that's kind of the acute panic attack. But say, for example, somebody who's just breathing a little bit faster, a little bit harder, upper chest breathing, irregular breathing patterns, and that's present in a minimum of 10% of the general population, but up to 75% of the anxiety and panic disorder population.
Wow.
So 75% of the population with anxiety and panic disorder have dysfunctional breathing. It's not just that stress levels change our breathing. Of course, when we are stressed, our breathing changes, but our everyday breathing is feeding into our stress levels. Who doesn't want to be more resilient? And the other thing about stress is when we have a lot of mind activity, it's impossible to do mindfulness. We have to think of this ourselves. The next time that we're having a really bad day, and there's a lot of thoughts going through our minds, and I don't suffer from anxiety, but of course, things happen. That's the way it is as human beings. I can change my breathing patterns without having to be so aware of my breath to help to bring the body and mind into balance. And that's the thing about breathing. So coming back to oxygen delivery and blood flow, if, for example, even getting to the working muscles, if there's insufficient oxygen getting to the working muscles, well, we're more prone to fatigue. In terms of the brain I spoke about. So like we have 50,000 miles of blood vessels throughout the human body, and our breathing is influencing how dilated or not are they. And people with poorer breathing are more likely to have cold hands and cold feet. It's not just the blood circulation in the hands and feet that's the problem, it's throughout the body.
I feel like I might be your test case here, because now I'm thinking, well, I wear socks to bed because when I touch my husband with my feet, he's like, you're so cold. So one of the things that I read on your website and in your books that I absolutely loved was you said breathing is not just for relaxing. It is an incredible tool when you get intentional about how you breathe every day to fight stress. And I would love for you to teach us right now how to stop being a dysfunctional breather and to breathe in a functional way in and out of our nose to get the maximum health benefit.
Okay. So the first exercise that I'm going to start off with is small little breath holds. And this is going to introduce you to a means of helping to activate a relaxation response. And then from that, I'm going to show you an exercise to decongest the nose.
Oh, great.
Because
okay.
If you have a stuffy nose, inevitably it's going to cause mouth breathing. And then I will do breathe light and then breathe low and slow.
Okay.
So I'm going to go from one sequence into another. And this can be, it will be no more than 5 minutes. And we're going to cover a bit of ground. So I think people will have to replay this. So the first exercise, Mel, that I would like you to do when the mind is racing and you're not feeling informed of focusing on your breathing, simply hold your breath in an exhalation. Take a normal breath in through your nose and out through your nose, and pinch your nose and hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let go. And just breathe normal now for about 2 to 3 breaths or even 4 breaths. Not to change your breathing, just breathing normal. And again, take a normal breath in through your nose and out through your nose, and pinch your nose and hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let go. And now just breathe normal for 3 to 4 breaths. So you're just breathing normal. The small breath hold will help to stimulate the vagus nerve, which secretes a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, which causes the heart rate to slow down, and the brain interprets that the body is safe. And again, take a normal breath in through your nose and out through your nose, and pinch your nose and hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let go. Breathe in through your nose. So now you're just breathing normal for 3 to 4 breaths. And in a couple of repetitions, then I will show you how to go from this to decongesting your nose. And again, normal breath in through your nose and out through your nose, and pinch your nose and hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let go and breathe in through your nose. Also, as you hold your breath, nitric oxide is pooling inside your nasal airway. Then when you let go, you're breathing in. You're carrying this nitric oxide into your lungs. Nitric oxide is antibacterial, antiviral. It's a bronchodilator. So for bronchitis, this is your natural way to help open up the lower airways. Last one. And again, normal breath in through your nose, out through your nose. Pinch your nose and hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let go. So now we're going to go on to the nose unblocking exercise.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes. Yes.
So when you say breathe normally, you mean not like how we normally breathe. You mean breathe in and out of your nose, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Well, that's how we should be normally
Well, I
breathing.
just, most of us are probably mouth breathers. So I just wanted to make sure everybody's getting the coaching that when he's cueing us to breathe normal, Patrick means in and out of your nose. And one thing I will tell you is even after the first round of breathing in and out of my nose, and then breathing in and out of my nose, and then pinching and holding for 5, I started to feel almost that sensation of going down in an elevator. Like you really start to feel the pressure that you're not even aware that is built up in your body start to lower. So it had an immediate impact on me. And I just wanted to point that out. Is that normal to experience that?
I think people will have different experiences. That exercise is very much an exercise we do with people who are prone to high stress, racing mind, panic disorder. See, the thing about breathing is we as human beings, breathing is it's such an important function, but every time that we get into a difficult situation, our breathing changes. And when we start playing with the breath, we can often relive the situations in our history. So I'll give you this example. Somebody who is coming into me with panic disorder.
Yeah.
Every time that they've had a panic attack in the past, they've been breathing faster and harder in upper chest, and they're feeling suffocated.
Yeah.
Now, even just placing attention on their breathing can make them anxious. And if I start doing any breathing exercises that alter the volume of breathing and it brings on air hunger, it can tip them into a panic. So we have to be very careful too about breathing in terms of tailoring the breathing exercises to suit the individual. Now, the next exercise I'm going to show you will decongest the nose. However, not to do this if somebody is prone to panic disorder or anxiety or pregnant or cardiovascular issues.
Oh, okay.
Now, despite that, it's actually relatively safe. So I would like you, and do this, you do all of these exercises, you always do them. You tune in to your body and do them to the level that you're comfortable with.
Okay.
So with this exercise, Mel, you take a normal breath in through your nose and out through your nose, and you pinch your nose, just gently hold your nose and just nod your head up and down, holding your breath. and keep holding your breath. Keep holding, keep holding, keep holding your breath, keep holding, and let go there and breathe in through your nose. So when you do a breath hold after an exhalation, so if you hold your breath after a normal exhalation, that will help to decongest the nose. Now, we need to do it 5 or 6 times.
I got worried about how much you were counting. I'm like, how long am I holding this? Oh my God.
So whenever you're ready,
I
take
am.
a normal breath in through your nose. Only normal. So I'm going to have
sorry.
you just do that again. So remember about the subtlety of the breath. Just a light breath in.
Patrick, there's nothing subtle about me. Here we go. Light breath in, everybody.
A light breath into your nose and a light breath out through your nose. And just gently hold your nostrils to stop breathing and nod your head up and down as you hold your breath. And keep relaxing into the body as you're holding your breath. Now, it's a very normal thing to hold your breath. Kids, if they go swimming, they'll do breath holds all the time. So it's a very normal human trait to go into the water and hold our breath. Now, as you hold your breath here, it's activating a slight stress response, which will help to open up the nose. And now let go, Mel, and breathe in through your nose. So the key to help decongesting the nose is to hold the breath for at least 30 seconds or so. But I would say when you start off, always start off gentle and just tune in on how is your body reacting to breath holding.
I'll tell you what just happened. I literally feel like my nostrils are now the size of a Tootsie Roll. They widened up, and all of a sudden it was super clear because my allergies are starting to kick in now that it's going summer to fall in the United States. And it worked that second time in particular, like,
yeah, no, it's a very reproducible technique. I've used it with thousands of people, and we had a small pilot study involving 26 people at a hospital here in Limerick in Ireland, and a 3-month follow-up. Symptoms of rhinitis, which are stuffy nose and runny nose, etc., had reduced by 70%. But I thought that pilot study, which was published as an abstract, I thought it would lead the way to generate some curiosity into a bigger study. It never happened. And that study took place 10 years ago. But despite that, the exercise works.
Well,
so
Patrick,
it's for people to try.
We're here now. We want to know. And I felt like it worked. And this is, again, I have so many elementary questions that I'm almost embarrassed to ask this one.
Oh, please do.
What coaching do you have for people that are so used to mouth breathing that breathing in and out of their nose is it just feels weird? And so they try it, but then they keep going back to the mouth breathing. How do you make this the new default, given the health benefits?
So there's 2 parts to it. There's always theory first, a little bit of theory. People have to understand about the importance of nose breathing. And in comparison to the mouth, the nose does all the work when it comes to breathing. And the second aspect of it then is breathing exercises. Gentle exercises, just for example, starting off with the 2 that we just did. And we also use a very simple tape around the mouth that's elasticated, that pulls the lips together. Oh, that's correct.
I have your tape.
That's the one.
I have
no samples here.
I'm going to put it on right now, everybody. Last night I taped we're going to get into mouth taping, but I literally...
See, you have to stretch it, Mel, about 30 or 40%. So it's only when you stretch it that you'll feel a tension.
Oh, I didn't even take off the sticky part. Okay. So everybody, it's like the shape of a O. Yep. And I stretch it
by about 30 to 40%.
I'm not
too
that
much
strong. Okay. Like that?
Not too much, not too little. Maybe a little bit less.
Okay.
And you're just stretching it and then placing it surrounding the mouth. And the elasticated tension should be pulling the lips together. So it should be, you should feel some tension there.
I do.
So with children and teenagers, we very much use that as a training tool during wakefulness. So because kids are kids and they get distracted and they're watching television, they're on iPhone, the mouth is open.
Right.
But for some adults as well. So it can be a very helpful. So part of this is the training during the day. So if an adult has the mouth open and they forget about it, the tape will automatically remind them to breathe through the nose. And it's all about changing habits.
It definitely signals that I shouldn't be breathing into my mouth.
Having the mouth open. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And then
this is
during
cool.
sleep, when the person is comfortable with breathing through the nose and, in terms of their nose being congested. And bear in mind, the one thing about the nose is that the more we breathe through it, the better it works. But normally what happens is the nose gets stuffy. The person feels uncomfortable breathing through the nose. They switch to mouth breathing. And when they switch to mouth breathing, it increases their nasal stuffiness. So it's a vicious circle. So I would also say to people that when you first switch from mouth to nose breathing, remember this is the natural way to breathe, in and out through the nose. And even if you feel a slight air hunger or a slight feeling that you're not getting enough air, and when you're doing physical exercise, initially you might feel an increased sensation of breathlessness, stick with it. Slow down your intensity of movement in order to maintain nose breathing. Or in other words, only go as fast as you can while breathing through the nose. The benefits far outweigh the disadvantages. And the other aspect of it is, if you continue walking with your mouth closed, the body adjusts to it. And you then can do physical exercise with less ventilation. So it's almost as if you're training your body to do more with less.
There's so much to cover. Can you just bottom line it for people about what happens, like what's wrong with breathing out through your mouth? We know the benefits of breathing in, but what goes wrong when you're breathing constantly in and out of your mouth?
I suppose the biggest one is that you lose moisture. So there's a 42% greater water loss breathing out through the mouth. And losing moisture, if your mouth is dry and you're losing moisture from the body, of course, you're more likely to be dehydrated. But that will impact your dental health. Gum disease, bad breath, for example, chapped lips. But the other problem about breathing out through the mouth during rest is that it's a fast exhalation. And see, when we think about the body's relaxation response, it's all in the exhalation. It's not really in the inhalation. You can take a fast breath in, or you could take a slow breath in. But really, when it comes to activating relaxation during rest, it's the speed of the exhalation. If you breathe out fast, it's a stressor.
Yep.
So if you breathe in fast and out fast, it's a stressor. It's not just how you breathe that way during stress, but if you deliberately breathe that way in your everyday, you're telling the brain that the body is under threat. You're going into this fight or flight response. And of course, your brain is here to protect you, and your brain wants to get you out of the situation. So you don't want to be breathing fast going into a boardroom meeting, put it that way. Because while you're going in person, in physical, your brain wants you to get out of there as quick as you can. So coming back to mouth breathing, if you breathe out through the mouth, there's less resistance to your breathing. It's a faster breath out, so
and
it's a
bigger,
stressful breath.
bigger exit ramp because the mouth is bigger than your nostril. And so breathing in and out of your nose, if I'm tracking correctly, one of the added benefits is that the exhale is going through something smaller than your mouth, so it slows you down. And in preparing to talk to you, we came across that Stanford study that you cite that is on your website too, and I thought this was super cool, that your breath is like your brain's remote control, that there are actually neurons in your brain watching your breath. And when you start to breathe faster or out of your mouth, it signals to another part of your brain that something's wrong. And so I want to make sure you listening to Patrick and all of this research and the 10 books that he's written, what he is saying to you is that learning how to breathe in and out of your nose has extraordinary benefit for lowering stress, for lowering anxiety, for being able to focus. You not only work with people, Patrick, that are struggling with anxiety or sleep apnea, but you're also coaching athletes and high performers, because your breath and being somebody that can breathe in a slow and steady fashion out of your nose helps you with focus. And so can we break down just the mechanics of the ideal normal breathing? Like how many breaths in and out if you're breathing normally in a healthy way in and out of your nose, should you take in, let's say, a minute?
So typically during rest, it's about 12 to 14 breaths. But the only caveat there is how much air is involved with each breath, the tidal volume. So we can't just focus on the respiratory rate. We also need to focus on tidal volume, because ultimately it's the volume of air that we are breathing. And if we breathe too much air, less oxygen is delivered throughout the body. So this is another aspect in, there's a myth out there that if you want to bring more oxygen throughout the body, you take this full big breath. But if you take this full big breath, you're getting rid of too much carbon dioxide. The loss of carbon dioxide will cause your blood vessels to constrict, and also red blood cells to hold on to oxygen more readily.
Can you
so
coach
coming
me?
Back to your,
Can you coach me through this? Because if I take a big breath, like if I go in through my mouth and I'm like, I'm trying to get a breath right. What happens as I go to get oxygen is my shoulders come up and I feel my chest pinch and I feel my stomach suck in, and I actually can't get a deep breath because I can't get it below my boobs. Like I can't get it down into like that really satisfying full breath. Is that what you're talking about when you talk about the flow or volume or whatever?
Yeah, there's two aspects. One is when you were talking about there, you're talking about shallow breathing, which is not ideal either. So we do want to breathe low with good recruitment of the diaphragm.
How do you do that?
And the best way to do that is in and out through the nose. So if you, for example, if you place your hands either side of your lower ribs.
Okay, so everybody, unless you're driving a car, I want you to cup your rib cage. Okay, are we cupping the rib cage or are we going underneath it?
Just at the base of the ribs.
Okay.
So just at the base of the ribs.
Got it.
And as you breathe in, you're just gently directing your lower ribs to move outwards.
Oh, how do you
and
do
as
that?
you breathe out, you're directing your lower ribs to move inwards. And the aspect is to hold your sides, because normally when people put it on their belly, they're pushing and pulling their belly irrespective of their breathing. So that's why you have your hands on your sides. So Mel, as you breathe in, you're just gently guiding your ribs out. And as you breathe out, your ribs are gently moving in. Now, that's a deep breath in the true sense of the word. We don't hear it. You're breathing in and out through your nose, and you're breathing slow, and you're breathing low. Now we can slow it down. If, for example, during rest, we want to have the ideal breath to help to bring the body and mind into balance, that's between 4.5 to 6.5 breaths per minute. So let's practice that with low breathing for just 1 minute.
Okay.
If you like.
Yeah, I would. Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Before we do this exercise? So what I'm gathering from this is that I'm a mouth breather with bad breath who's causing myself stress and anxiety because I'm signaling to my brain with my shallow breathing that something's wrong. And that I always thought deep breathing, because I practice yoga, was this belly breath. And so I've always focused on inflate and deflate the stomach. And what you're talking about when you cup kind of the bottom of your ribs, because I want everybody to get this, you can watch it on YouTube, but for those of you listening to Patrick and to me, I want you to really get this, that it's really more of a horizontal thing. You're not inflating your stomach, you're making your bottom rib cage expand and come back in. And I'm realizing that so much of my breathing pattern has been almost like vertical, up and down. And I hadn't been thinking about that. So that was super, super helpful. And you said that in a normal, just going about your life, you're not trying to relax. You're just trying to focus. You're going through your day. You're not trying to stress yourself out. You're getting the benefit of normal in and out of your nose breathing. You said that it would be somewhere between 10 to 14 breaths in and out of your nose in a minute. And now what you're about to show us is that for relaxation, you can do this kind of deeper breathing where you kind of fill your diaphragm horizontally, your rib cages move out, but it's for 4 to 6 times a minute. Is that what we're about to do?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure everybody's following.
And just coming back to the diaphragm, like when the diaphragm, which is the main breathing muscle, and it separates our chest from our abdomen. So during inhalation, the diaphragm is moving downwards. And it's the movement of the diaphragm downwards that draws air into the lungs. But as the diaphragm is moving downwards, you will have some movement to your front. So you will have some belly movement and movement to your sides and movement to your back. But I always think it's much better to focus on your sides, because very often people, when they focus on their belly, they're pushing and pulling their belly, which has nothing got to do with their breathing. And it's a good gauge of the generation of what's called intra-abdominal pressure, that when you breathe in, that your ribs are gently moving out. Because this is what's giving you a good indication of the recruitment of the diaphragm, and from that then stabilization of the spine. So the diaphragm breathing muscle is really important, because when you breathe with good recruitment of the diaphragm, it's also a calming effect on the mind.
Mm-hmm.
The diaphragm and the brain are connected. When we think of the phrenic nerve, and then we think of the mental health conditions such as schizophrenia and schizophrenic. So earlier on, you were talking about that work by Stanford, which I think is so cool, that there's a structure in the brain that's literally spying on our breathing. Now, we can use that to our advantage. Don't breathe fast, don't breathe shallow, because you're telling the brain that you're under threat. And your brain is going to arouse you from sleep and put you into this stress mode. So now we're talking about, well, say, for example, we have 5 minutes to spare. And instead of just scrolling aimlessly, wasting time on our mobile phone, give ourselves a little bit of attention. Getting attention out of the mind and holding your attention to your breath, which in turn is training your brain to be focused, but not just about awareness. It's also about changing the physiology. So if you have your hands again, just gently on either side of your lower ribs. And as you're breathing in, that you're breathing in for a count of 5. So you're breathing in 2, 3, 4, 5, out 2, 3, 4, 5, in 2, 3, 4, 5, out 2, 3, 4, 5, in 2, 3, 4, 5, out 2, 3, 4, 5, in 2, 3, 4, 5, out 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, I will say, Mel, say for example, if we have somebody with pretty poor breathing and they're breathing 20 breaths per minute, I would say don't go from 20 breaths down to 6 all of a sudden. Gently soften your breathing, but slow it down to a level that's comfortable for you. So if you're starting off, what you could be doing is maybe breathing in for 2 seconds and out for 3. So that's slowing down the respiratory rate down to 12 breaths per minute. In for 3 seconds and out for 5. So during rest, we always need to think of the exhalation. It should be about 1.5 to 2 times the inhalation, the length of the inhalation.
Could you say that again about the length of the exhalation versus the inhalation with the normal nose breathing? Because you've said repeatedly, the exhalation is the most important part.
Yeah, the speed of the exhalation during rest should be about 1.5 to 2 times that of the inhalation. And you can play with it. Like, I'll give you an example. If I'm having a meeting that's pretty intense, I don't want to go into that meeting breathing fast and shallow. I will deliberately, in that situation, nobody even knows what I'm doing. I could be sitting down or I could be standing outside the door waiting to go in. I will just take a soft breath in through my nose. I don't even time it. A soft breath in through my nose and a really slow and relaxed and gentle breath out. Because by doing that, I'm telling my brain that everything is okay. And I'm also taking my attention out of my mind and onto the breath to put the critical mind aside, because I want to go into that meeting and I want to be in a state of mind that I'm fully there, that I'm listening with all of my attention, not just lost in thought. Now, I would say don't wait until the important meeting before you start to do it. Start bringing it into your way of life.
There was a story you were going to tell us.
Yes. So there's a really well-known doctor from Italy called Bernardi. And he did a study back, I think it's in 2000. He looked at the breathing that was taking place when people were saying prayers of different faiths. So one was mantras and the other was the rosary, which is a prayer from the Catholic faith. And both, whether it was a mantra or the rosary, both of them lowered the respiratory rate down to 6 breaths per minute. Now, I think there's something really brilliant in this, that when we think of people who are saying prayers, it wasn't just from a spiritual and psychological aspect, but it was also the effect it was having on their body and mind physiologically. And it's so cool, that this information was always out there. And now it's time to start embracing it.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I asked you the question in the very beginning, what's the purpose? And I was thinking about it kind of from a neurological, scientific standpoint, but there's something so much deeper that it really is the quality of your life that you have within you if you take the advice and you apply this research to your life and you start to teach yourself how to use the tool of normal nose breathing and longer exhales. And, you keep kind of talking about this soft and gentle, that this is something that your body was hardwired with, a natural intelligence. And so it's really cool that the research shows that when people are in a state of being present, in a state of purpose, in a state of deeper connection, that your body naturally drops in to this kind of breathing. What is your secret to staying young at heart and young in your mind?
Staying connected to your friends, old friends. I've always had a man in my life. I've been very lucky about that.
What does that mean? I've always had a man in my life. Because how long were you married?
45 years. He died of cancer.
How old were you?
68.
Okay.
And about a year and a half later, I met a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I'd fallen in love. And my children thought it was way too early for me to have a man in my life.
I didn't feel that way.
Well, you're not one of my boys.
I don't think Chris felt that way either.
Well, the other two did. And but I don't think they remembered that Ken was sick for 2 years.
That's true.
So I was alone for 2 years as far as having someone loving me.
Yeah.
So I was with Bill for a while, and we had our differences. And after 2 years, we went our separate ways. And soon after that, I met another guy who is local. And, Hans and I were together for 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah, can you believe that?
No.
Yeah, we were.
Wow.
But he's the nicest, sweetest man, as you know.
Yes,
but he
love
just
him.
doesn't have the energy that I have.
Yeah.
And I was constantly, arranging all our social life and all our trips. We did a lot of traveling, but I was the one that was doing it.
Mm.
And so I eventually got him to move back into his own house and then down the line into a retirement community, which he's very happy. And I still see him, and we're very good friends.
Yes, I
very
love
good
him.
friends.
We love Hans.
And then I met another guy who's in town, and actually it was me who met John.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew John, but I saw him at this artist thing. You were there.
Oh, this is when I first moved here, and I was
Yeah.
having constant anxiety
Yeah.
and hating my life, and
Yeah.
thinking I'm now going to a place where people live when they're about to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't realize that's where you met him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I didn't meet him. I already knew him.
Okay.
But something else was happening later in the week. I don't know, some concert or something. And so I just went up to John and I said, "Would you like to go?" And he said, "Yeah." But he also had a girlfriend in Canada. So that went on for a while. And then he gave her up.
And he picked you up.
Yeah. And so we're together, and he makes me very happy. And he has a lot of energy. And he organizes everything. Like going
Amazing.
to a dude ranch. We just got back from a dude ranch, as you know.
Yes. So 85 years old, the two of you go off on your first trip together, and you go to a dude ranch in Montana, where I understand you are learning how to herd cattle on horseback.
Yeah. We did. We did a cattle drive. It was awesome.
And you're not like a horse person. This is not
Well,
like a
no.
thing. Well, how long had it been since you had truly been on a horse, though?
I don't know, 40 years.
All right. So staying connected. But this goes but you went for long periods of time not in relationships, though.
No, I probably started seeing Hans about a month after I broke up with Bill.
Jesus, Judy. Wow.
So you see,
okay.
I haven't been alone.
Okay. Well,
Oh,
you're funny.
yeah, no, I'm very fortunate that way. you
Yeah.
know?
Well, you create what you want
Yeah.
and you put yourself out there. And I also notice that connection to friends is very important.
Extremely important.
So how did you stay so connected to your friends when your friends literally live all over the world?
Well, Mel, I have to give you some credit here.
Me?
Yes, you. Because after Ken died, and I didn't have anybody in my life, and I'll never forget this either. This is before you started into the business. I rented an apartment in New York, as you remember,
Oh, yeah.
by myself, which was a kind of a lonely experience, actually, because went to dinner by myself, and but of course, as soon as people realized I had an apartment, they started coming. But it's still, being in a big city alone can be very lonely.
Right. Because you see people everywhere.
Yeah. But I was right next to the Hudson River, so I was running and I took my bike. So
Mhm.
I stayed active physically. But I remember mentioning to you that I was going to go to Florida. I didn't know, what I was going to do. And you said to me, pick up the phone and call some of your friends and make sure you have something on your calendar before you hit the ground in Florida.
Mm.
I'll never forget that. And it made a difference because I had something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just had a blank slate and I probably could have felt pretty sorry for myself.
Yeah. But even beyond that, you have kept in close touch with your women friends.
Yes, it's very important to do that.
And how do you do that?
You pick up the phone and call them. It's so many people go around the back door. And I'm going to give you an example. I have a good friend who has Alzheimer's, and she's young. And she admitted that she has Alzheimer's. So she's very open about it.
Yep.
And her husband got her on the new drug, the Alzheimer's drug by Biogen, this winter. He was very glad that he did, and she was glad that she was on it. 3 days ago, she went out to lunch with a very good friend of mine and said to her friend and my friend, I just had a physical and I'm 100% all right. I don't have Alzheimer's.
Really?
So obviously she's coming all the way around into the denial, which she wasn't before. So this is my point. Shirley said, do you think I should call Marcia and tell her, Marcia being a good friend of hers? And I said, well, why would you do that? Why don't you call Bob, her husband? Why don't you go directly to Bob? He might already know that she said that, but he might not. And say to him, I just had lunch with Connie, and this is what she said. And this is what's so important in life, is that if you have a good friend that you want to talk to, you talk to them. Don't talk to your other friend that's a friend of your friend.
Right.
If you want to talk to somebody on the phone, call them. And I don't think a lot of people do that.
They talk about their friends, but they don't talk to their friends.
That's right.
Yeah. If you're thinking about somebody, pick up the phone and call them. If you have something that you're concerned about, pick up the phone and call them. Don't talk about what you're concerned about.
Well, we have another friend that is now into dementia, but is not admitting it. And the scary thing is that they're thinking maybe her husband has it too. And I haven't said anything, but I'm thinking that I need to go to Sally and say to her, are you worried about yourself? because everybody's talking about her, but nobody's talking to her. And maybe she would say to me, "What are you talking about? I'm fine."
Right.
Or maybe she'd break down and say, "It's true. I don't know what I'm really doing,"
Yeah.
because she doesn't.
Wow. There was one other thing that I would love to touch on because service has been such an enormous part of your life and volunteering. After your husband of 45 years, Ken, died, you moved to Cambodia.
Well, I didn't move.
Well, what did you do? You did something that is just incredible.
Well, I went on a bike trip to Vietnam, and I visited Cambodia, and I fell in love. I fell in love with the people in Cambodia.
Hmm.
So I said, and I was with Bill at the time, I said, I'm going to come back here and teach English. And so I got a hold of this NGO, Cambodia Living Arts, and asked them if they could find me someplace where I could teach, which is really quite ballsy since I don't know anything about teaching. I just know I know how to talk English or speak,
I know she talks English well, everybody.
but that's it. Anyway, yeah, they got me a position in this school that the kids go to a regular school, but they come here to
Mhm.
learn English
Mhm.
after school.
Yep.
And I mean, I had monks in that class. I had mothers in that class. I mean, I had, oh my God, it was hysterical. And you've heard me say this. This was quite an experience.
How many years did you go to Cambodia?
6.
6 years. You'd live there for almost 3 months
Yeah.
and teach 7 days a week.
Plus, your daughter came,
And our daughter, when she was in 8th grade, went over and
fell in love.
fell in love, and she's actually on her way back because of that experience as we speak. Wow. What talk to us about staying young at heart? I mean, because at the heart of every one of these stories, there's very similar themes. You have to create what you want in your life.
Right.
Connection is incredible. And you have this wonderful sense of humor about you where you just try it. Like you don't even stop yourself and think, well, how's this going to work? I'm moving to Cambodia. I'm 69 years old. I'm going to do this alone. I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, how is this going to work? Where am I going? You just are like, okay, let's do this. We're going to figure it out. So how do you stay young at heart? What do you think that's about?
Well, I go back again about living in the moment. And I don't take any day for granted that I have. I mean, I'm really grateful for every day I have.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I can say. I mean, I think most people live their lives like, well, of course there'll be tomorrow. There was yesterday, there'll be tomorrow, there'll be next week. I can do this, I can do that. Well, who's to say? We have a friend who just was on his motorcycle, bingo.
Yeah.
So that keeps me positive because I'm grateful. I'm so grateful. First of all, I have a fabulous life. I have an incredible family, all these grandchildren. I'm not sick. I'm healthy. I have all my knees and all my hips. So I'm very grateful.
You don't have your hair between your legs, though.
Well, some people pay for a Brazilian. So
That's true. You're grateful you don't have to pay for that.
No, I don't.
But there's something else that you talked about, which is adding stress. Because there's a lot of people around the world that have their health, that have a great family, that have friends around them, and they're miserable.
Well, because they're expecting something else that they don't have. And there is nothing else. You have what you have right now at the moment and don't expect anything more. And I think people live in a lot of disappointment because they think about what they'd like to have or what their neighbor has or something other than what they have this moment. And that creates the stress because if there's something out there that you want and you don't have it, that's stress in itself.
Right. Well, what's also amazing about that perspective is if you're not happy and grateful for the things that you have now, why on earth do you think you're going to be happy and grateful when you get something you don't have?
And how do you know you're going to have it?
Yeah, like you need to learn how to appreciate everything on the way.
Exactly.
And until you do that, you're never going to be happy.
No.
Because you're always going to be expecting something more and wanting something more and then thinking that you deserve more. And that mindset also keeps you from not only appreciating everything that's right in front of you, like the day that you have, but it also makes you, somehow it like prevents you from realizing you can create it. Like you can learn how to wake up every day and be grateful for this day and just put your head down and do the work to create what you want.
Be thankful what you do have. Don't think about what you wish you had. I'll always remember, and I think this is true of every child. My mother used to say, you're going to wish your life away. Because we'd say, oh, I wish I could have. I wish I could do. I wish I could go. As a child, we're always wishing. She'd say, you're going to wish your life away. Well, what are you wishing for? Just be grateful for what you have right this minute. Because who knows what you're wishing for might not be right anyhow.
It's true. It's true. And as soon as you wish for something else, you're rejecting what you have.
Exactly.
Wow. Is there anything else that you want to share or that you can think of or mistakes that you think people make?
I think one of the things that I think about when we talk about staying in the moment is that we don't realize that the process that we're going through in life is really the most exhilarating. The best part is the process. It's not getting there. So often, whether you're building a house or whether you're going on vacation, it's the process. You think about, oh my gosh, when we go, we're going to do a dude ranch and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. It's the anticipation that's so exciting.
Right.
And then once you're there, it's like, oh, okay. So it's the wishing. Don't wish for something else. Just be so thankful for what you have right now.
If you're not currently taking a high quality multivitamin or other supplements, what are the non-negotiables where everybody should start?
For probably less than $1 a day, you can get what you need, which is a multivitamin.
Yep.
And I would say a good one. It's cleanly produced. It doesn't have fillers, additives,
How do you
dyes.
tell if it's a good one?
I have curated ones that are high grade. In other
Okay.
words, the ones that are manufactured in good manufacturing practices, that don't have fillers, chemicals, and additives, that are bioavailable forms of nutrients. And so if you stick with certain brands, you can kind of guarantee you're going to get that.
Okay.
Then I think a vitamin D for almost everybody, even in the summer. People are like, oh, I'm taking, vitamin D in the summer. I don't need it. You do. Most people, unless they're out there running around half naked between 10 and 2 every day all year long, you're going to be vitamin D deficient.
That's only you. I've seen you in your before and after photos that we're going to link. The dude is tan with the 6-pack. You're running around getting the vitamin D. He's embarrassed and laughing. We know it's true. Now, is there different forms of D,
Vitamin
like
D3,
D3?
Vitamin D3.
And do you have to take it with something else to be absorbed?
With fat. You need with fat. So with food, basically.
Okay.
So maybe between 1,000 to 5,000. The government guidelines say up to 4,000 is safe. So there's no downside to that. And then fish oil for most people, because 90+% of us are deficient in omega-3 fats because we don't eat wild food that much anymore. And
what does the fat do?
These omega-3 fats are fats that we need in small amounts that are what our brains are made up of.
Oh.
They regulate inflammation. They are what our cell membranes are made of. They are basically the most critical fats that we consume, and most of us don't have enough of them. And they can treat depression and very many mental issues. Even ADD has been found to be helpful. Postpartum depression. I mean, so a lot of things that we just think, oh, what do we do with these things? But there are great studies that show that these can be effective. So I think that's a kind of basic non-negotiable.
Got it. So multivitamin, everybody, the D3
and fish oil.
And fish oil. What about magnesium? Because you've mentioned it a couple times.
That's my fourth one. But depending on your symptoms, and how do you know you need magnesium? Well,
I don't know. How do I know?
Listen up, everybody. It's pretty simple. If you have anything that's irritable or twitchy or spasmy, it's likely you're magnesium deficient. So if you're anxious, your emotions are twitchy. If you have palpitations, it's twitchy. If your colon's not working and it's in spasm, you have constipation. If you have muscle cramps, you have eye twitching. Any of those things are signs of low magnesium.
I'm just twitching as you describe those symptoms because I'm like, check. I'm going to use, I promised everybody a appointment, zero cost, with one of the world's most respected medical experts and leading voices in the functional medicine space. My toes cramp all the time.
Yeah.
Why?
Everybody's favorite radio station, you know what that is?
No.
WIFM.
What does that mean?
What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? Yes, exactly.
So your toes.
Yes, my toes.
Probably cramp because you have either electrolyte imbalances or magnesium.
Oh.
And so if, people often don't have enough electrolytes in their diet, particularly potassium. So you can get that from eating lots of vegetables, from vegetable broths, or take electrolyte solutions. But taking magnesium is a huge cure for muscle cramps, and it's particularly foot cramps.
So what surprising things cause your magnesium to go down?
So we should have a lot of magnesium because it's in all foods, nuts and seeds, and a lot of plant foods. But we do so much to make our bodies dump magnesium in our urine. We drink too much soda. We have too much caffeine, too much alcohol, and too much stress, all of which cause us to lose magnesium in our urine.
How does it make you lose magnesium if you drink a soda?
Well, it's got something called phosphoric acid in it, which is in the dark colored colas, and that causes you to leach magnesium out. And
wow.
Yeah.
And what about seltzer versus water?
Like bubbly.
Like, is it I'm really curious about whether or not drinking seltzer.
It's okay to drink bubbly water. I think you should mix it up, but if you only drink bubbly water, it's probably not totally great for you. But if you have water and sparkling water, if you like that, I love sparkling water, so not an issue.
So when you look at the research around happiness, researchers have put happiness into two big categories. One is hedonic happiness, and hedonic happiness is, am I having fun right now? It's the moment-to-moment fluctuating experiences that you have. And let's go back to the metaphor. It's like the waves in the ocean. They come and they go. You can jump in, you can play, you can have fun, and then it's over. And then there is the deeper happiness, the eudaimonic happiness, which is the sense of your life having meaning, of you feeling fulfilled and thriving in that life of yours. And it's important for you to understand that happiness has these two buckets, because I think what happens for a lot of us, and this kind of gets to Andrea's question, is that maybe you have one type of happiness. Maybe you're having a lot of fun on the surface, but life doesn't feel very meaningful. Or maybe you're deep in it, but you're not having any fun. And so I really want to unpack the difference between these two things and why you need both before we jump into the 3 different ways that you can increase happiness in your life. And so let's go to another question from a listener named Rachel.
Hey Mel, I absolutely love your podcast and all of your work. I have a very loaded question, and I know a one-size-fits-all answer might not exist, but I wanted to ask anyway. How can I truly be happy? How do I cultivate happiness? I read so many self-help books, read a lot about the effects of childhood trauma. I journal. I try to be conscious of my habitual thoughts and patterns and work to reframe them. I exercise. I'm always listening to inspiring and transformational content like you. I feel like I do all the things, but I still struggle just to be happy and to feel happy. And I feel very stuck in the same emotions, and I really want to change. I really want to enjoy my life. Do you have any advice?
Rachel, I so relate to you. And I want to just pass the mic to you listening right now. When Rachel said, I just want to enjoy my life, didn't you get the chills? Didn't you nod along and say, yeah, I just want to enjoy my life too? And this is really on my mind because I think that's the point of life, right? To really try to enjoy it.
And one of the things that I notice can happen when you are in a period in your life where you're trying to heal, you're investing in yourself, in your personal growth. You mentioned that you're working on trauma. You're trying to dig out of some of the holes maybe that you feel like you fell into. You're trying to change your mindset. That's serious work. That was me for years too. Here's the problem with having a big healing journey. You're not having any fun. I think about periods of my life when I was going through a lot of change and I was working on myself and I was doing everything that you're doing. Every book I picked up was self-help. Everything that I listened to was self-improvement. I couldn't even remember the last time I read a fiction novel or I went to a concert or I went to a party. Everything got so serious because my focus became so serious. And my focus was about improving my life, improving my life, improving my life. And doing the work to change your life, it's important. Doing the work to identify toxic patterns that you have or bad thinking patterns that make you feel like shit, that's super important. But you must also double down on the fun while you're doing the deeper work. And so the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to set an intention that your number one goal this year is to have more fun, to invest in that first category, hedonic happiness, that researchers say is so important. Because yes, it's meaningful. Yes, it's fulfilling to do the hard work to change your life for the better. But changing your life for the better also means that you need more moments of fun in your life. And I worry a lot about this based on what we've all experienced in the past 3 years. We've all become hermits. It's hard enough to get yourself out of your house. But the other thing that's happened is if you're not going into work, if you're still working from home, you're also missing out on all of the spontaneous stuff that happens when you bump into people when you're out and about. In fact, I can tell you a story. Just the other night, it was Sunday night. And, as a bit of background, my husband and I had gotten some really awful news last week that a very, very close friend of ours suddenly died. Age 47, heart attack, gone. And I had been holed up in my house ever since hearing the news. I was super sad, feeling down, and I hadn't left the house in days. And so on Sunday, Chris says to me, Mel, I made a 4:30 reservation at the paddle tennis courts, which is a kind of form of almost like ping pong that you can play, sort of like pickleball in the middle of the winter on these tennis courts outside with some friends. It was the last thing I wanted to do. I wanted to just curl up on the couch and suck my thumb and feel sad. And we got into the car, and the entire ride over, I was sitting there thinking, should I tell Chris I'm pissed that he made this date with this couple to go play paddle? Should I tell him this is the last thing that I want to do? I kept saying to myself, should I say this? Should I not say it? And then I would say, no, don't shit on his parade. Like, just suck it up. It's going to be okay. We pull up. The sun's starting to go down. It's freezing. I've got a hat on and mittens on, and I'm grumpy, and I don't really want to be there. And then I see our friends, and I felt a little lighter. Do you know it took about 5 seconds of hitting that ball around for me to feel totally different? The truth is, I needed the fun. I needed the laughter. I needed to not be thinking about something so heavy. I needed to see people that I really like. I needed to do something that wasn't that serious, like working on myself or feeling sad or grieving. I needed fun. And getting out on that paddle court, it was fun. And there's a part of me that is sitting here going, Mel, are we really having a conversation right now on this podcast about the obvious? That we need to schedule time to have fun, that we need to force ourselves out of our houses, that we need to break this habit of being isolated and lonely? Yeah, we do have to have this conversation because I don't think you and I have truly grasped the extent to which our day-to-day lives and our happiness has been impacted by these past 3 years. I mean, even those of us who really enjoyed that period of lockdown where we were trapped inside with our families, this new normal, this part of it, where we're sort of back to normal, but we're not, but we're coping, but we're like this situation, the loneliness and isolation, it feels like it's become everybody's new lifestyle. It's our new default. But this isn't just obvious, it's well researched. Researchers have proven that the difference between people who are happy and those of us who aren't is that happy people prioritize doing things that make them happy. I know, it's so dumb, but I need the reminder too. So now let's go back to my analogy about the ocean and the beach and waves and happiness. And I want you to just imagine that you're sitting on the beach and those waves are rolling in and they're rolling out and there's a boogie board sitting next to you. At some point, you have to get off the towel and you got to run into that ocean and you got to go play. And the fact is, it just takes one person to get everybody else to go. There's always that one person in a group of people at a beach who stands up first and grabs the boogie board and says, let's go body surfing. Come on, guys, let's go into the waves. And thankfully, this past Sunday night, for me, it was Chris. He was that one person. And look, being intentional about enjoying your life, about having fun, particularly during those periods of time where you're grieving, where you are going through something difficult, where life feels heavy, prioritizing fun is critical. But that's just one of the three things that you and I are going to discuss when it comes to getting intentional and amplifying up the 40% of happiness that is within your control right now. And if you're sitting there scratching your head going, oh my God, this is so me, but Mel, like, I think I forgot how to have fun. Don't worry about it. I've got an entire episode that we did a while back called How to Have More Fun, and I will link to that along with all the studies that we're talking about in the show notes. And so now that you and I have been playing in the waves and you understand that dragging yourself out of the house to the beach, off the towel, into the ocean, and forcing yourself to do things that are fun, that is part of happiness that we cannot escape. You and I are now going to go deeper into the ocean. And we're going to talk about the two other elements that you can tap into to create more happiness in your life right now. And we're going to do that using more questions from fellow listeners of the podcast when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Mel Robbins, and you and I are talking about what research says about creating more happiness in your life. We've already talked about the fact that researchers have identified two types of happiness: hedonic happiness and eudaimonic happiness, both of which are critical to your overall feelings of happiness. And we've talked about why getting intentional about having more fun is critical to you feeling happier now. Now we're going to jump into the deeper part of happiness, and that is the eudaimonic happiness, whether or not your life has meaning. Because when you go through periods of life where life is monotonous, it just feels kind of blah, you're on autopilot, you're not going to feel that happy. Just ask Jenna.
Hey Mel, my name is Jenna, and my question for you is, how do you truly find happiness in everyday ordinary life? I'm a mom of 2 boys, and I struggle most days with being as joyful as I was when they were very little.
As a mother of 3 kids who are now young adults, I can relate to what you were saying about how you were joyful when they were little. And I love that you use the word joyful, because I want to go back to that metaphor that I introduced at the very beginning of an ocean, and thinking about an ocean when you think about happiness. And so to me, when you go to the beach and it's a very, very calm day, there are no waves, there might not even be a cloud in the sky. Boy, it sure is beautiful. Happiness is like a still ocean on those days. It's your ability to stand in that ocean and feel this state of presence and connectedness and gratitude to simply being in the ocean. And I want to come back to something that you also said that I absolutely loved. You used the word ordinary. And the reason why I think it's important for us to focus in on the word ordinary is we often make the mistake of thinking that happiness is this big thing, this big burst, the big wave. And when it comes to the eudaimonic happiness, the deeper meaning in your life that creates the sense of happiness and fulfillment for you, I want to flip this perspective, because true happiness comes from finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. That's right. True happiness is actually pretty ordinary. And researchers have identified the number one factor in you living a happy life. And it is the most ordinary thing on the planet, which is why most of us miss it. And that's the quality and depth of your relationships. So let's unpack this. The Harvard study of adult development is the longest in-depth longitudinal study of human life that's ever been done. I mean, this has been going on for 84 years and counting. And for those of you super geeks like me out there, this used to be called the Harvard Men Study. So when you hear people talking about the Harvard study of adult development, that's the new name for this. And it now includes 3 generations of people that they've been studying. The original 724 participants now include 1,300 descendants. How cool is that? And here's the thing about this study. This study followed people through their life, asking them all kinds of questions as people aged. And one of the reasons why this study is so profound is because it tracked people as they lived. Most studies have people looking backwards, which means, when you look backwards, you often change the details. That's why the Harvard study of adult development is so exciting and so accurate, and the most accurate and important study of happiness that's ever been done. Not only because they have so much data and brain imaging scans, but they've also been studying people in real time, tracking them forward as they're living their lives. And Dr. Robert Waldinger is the 4th director of the study, and he and past study leaders have published these amazing findings that you and I can apply to our lives. These results from the Harvard Men's Study, they've been replicated in 5 other huge global studies. And I'm telling you all this because there's one singular conclusion from all of this data, all of this research, all of these fancy institutions. And it's this: good relationships keep you happier and healthier. Good relationships make you happier and healthier. The single best decision you can make to improve your health and happiness is to cultivate what researchers call warm relationships. I know what you're thinking. Mel, what the hell are warm relationships? Well, from a clinical standpoint, warm relationships are relationships that don't cause conflict, and you feel positive emotions around the people that you have a warm relationship with. Said in a normal person's way, it's basically people that make you feel warm and fuzzy. That's what warm relationships are. And I want you to stop and think right now. Let's apply the science. If you think about people in your life, I just want you to put 2 columns in your mind. Who would you put under the column labeled warm? They give you the warm and fuzzies. You get a text from them. You're like, oh, yeah, okay. You're excited to see them. You feel energized when you make plans. Now there's the cold column. These are people that put you on edge. These are people that drain your energy. These are the people that when they call or text you, you're like bracing for something. I can boil 84 years of research down to one takeaway. You want to be happier? Put all your energy into warm relationships, building them, strengthening them, spending time with those people in the warm column. You do that, you will be a happier you right now. And the second way that you can do that, by the way, prioritizing the warm, is spend less time with people in the cold column. You either need to stop hanging out with them because they're sucking your energy dry, or you got to put some effort into warming them up by forgiving them or reframing how you see them or working on your boundaries so that you're not triggered by them and their negativity doesn't impact your happiness. So keep that visual of a warm and a cold column. And as you meet people in your life, you can immediately feel what they're like. Are they warm? Are they bringing out the fuzzies? Or are you feeling on edge? Because when it comes to happiness, your happiness right now, not the I'll be when happy, the happiness that truly matters, standing in that deep end of the ocean, the quality of your relationships is truly the most important thing that matters. And I can explain why at an even deeper level. The reason why this matters so much, it is the number one indicator of a happy life. Good, warm relationships. Floating in that ocean with your warm buddies, keeping you buoyant. The reason why is evolution. See, positive or warm interactions with people, you know what that does, that warm, fuzzy feeling? Those kind of people in your warm column? They make you feel safe. When you're around those people, you're not on edge, so your body feels safe. And the opposite is true when you're around people that you would put in the cold column, because when you're around negativity, when people trigger you, when they put you on edge, when you feel like you can't be yourself, you're now in a stress response of fight, flight, or freeze. And this response to other people, it's wired in you. Early Homo sapiens survived because their bodies and their brains, they not only encouraged connection, but they also signaled when somebody might be unsafe. You and I survived because we're social beings. So this is hardwired into us. And here's where it gets interesting. When you feel loneliness, your brain perceives that as life-threatening. And loneliness is not just about physical separation from other people. You can feel very lonely in a crowded room. You can feel lonely in a bad marriage. You can feel lonely in a toxic friendship. And if you're nodding your head right now, thinking, wow, maybe it's not unhappiness. Maybe the core issue for me is I'm lonely. Well, 75% of adults feel moderate to high levels of loneliness. And loneliness is about the quality of your relationships. And I want to tie this back to evolution. Loneliness feels threatening because you're meant to survive in a tribe of people. You're meant to be connected with people that make you feel safe and warm. It's not only part of happiness, this goes down to your mind and body needing protection. And they've even proven that when life is really hard, when it can come at you in full-on attack mode, when you're in survival mode, warm, connected relationships protect you from the stress of life. So how do you do this? How do you tap into relationships? It sounds simple, but again, make the column warm and cold. And then call your friends, text them, arrange time to meet them. So when you feel a pang of loneliness, I want you to understand it's an alarm, just like anxiety. It's a signal that you're missing connection. Please do not ignore it. You may be surprised to hear that I felt this way for a very long time. I kept saying out loud, I'm not happy. I don't feel fulfilled. But when I dug deep into what was really going on for me, the core issue was loneliness. I was having fun. I was really busy. I was doing meaningful work. But deep down inside, I was really lonely. And it may also surprise you to hear that it was during one of the most successful stretches in my career. I was on the road all the time. I was booked nonstop to give speeches. I was working on all kinds of projects with Audible. The business was booming. I was making lots of money. And I have never been unhappier because I was lonely. I was traveling so much, chasing success, chasing achievement, going for the next thing, staying busy, that I never saw my friends. I barely saw Chris. I missed out on a ton of time with our daughters while they were in high school. It was just go, go, go. Now, I had a lot of fun on the business trips. I would laugh a lot. I was always traveling with colleagues, so I wasn't alone. And I was having fun in the waves of life. But when you talk about floating in the deep end of the ocean, I was profoundly lonely. And that meant I was profoundly unhappy. And it can be powerful when you admit this to yourself, because when you realize what you're dealing with is loneliness, that helps you identify the issue you need to improve, which is you need to start reaching out to people. We underestimate the impact that simply getting an unexpected text from an old friend can have on you. Think about how amazing it is when you have a birthday and everybody on social media that gets, the kind of notification that it's your birthday, they come out of nowhere and they wish you happy birthday. It's like, that's unbelievable. It feels so good. You haven't talked to that person since high school, but it feels good to have somebody just give you a quick comment on your birthday. And so if you're sitting around saying, I'm really lonely, but you're not reaching out, you're not calling people, you're not the one making plans or inviting people over for dinner, guess what? You're going to stay lonely. Because when I really looked in the mirror and said, I'm lonely, I need to do something about this. I never get invited anywhere. I don't see anybody. Well, I wasn't inviting anybody over. I wasn't making any plans. It starts with you. And look, it could be anybody. It could be friends, family, coworkers. All you need to do is identify old relationships or cold relationships or warm relationships where you haven't seen somebody in a long time and reach out. And by the way, it could be old relationships. It could be people you haven't seen in a long time. Just anybody at all that makes you feel warm. Start putting energy into talking, texting, commenting, and making plans to see them. And be careful of the cold people, because research shows that spending time with the people in the cold column, it can actually make you feel more lonely. And it even worsens your health to be around people like that. And so you've got your friend Mel Robbins' permission to stop putting energy into draining relationships, because that's only going to make you feel more lonely, and spend more time with warm relationships. And that brings me back to Jenna's question, because she mentioned, did you notice that she felt happier when her kids were little? I suspect that when your kids were little, you were probably part of mom groups. You saw young moms all the time at drop off, at pickup, at play group, and you felt like you were part of something. You were you had more warm relationships in your life. That's a sign that you're just missing connection. And I know I said it already, but I can't highlight enough how profound of a difference it can make to simply admit to yourself that you're lonely. That was the turning point for me when I realized a couple years ago, holy cow, I'm unhappy because I'm profoundly lonely. I don't see Chris enough, so I'm lonely in my marriage. I am lonely in my family because I'm not around. I'm working all the time. I never see my friends. And so once I said it was loneliness, that was the cause of my unhappiness, I could do something about it. And you want to know the first decision I made? I made a decision that I was going to change my work life, that I was going to get off the road, that Oakley being in high school was like a melting ice cube. And once the time was gone, I was not going to get it back. And so I reorganized my entire career, my entire business. Instead of sitting on a plane, I'm now sitting above my garage talking to you in a microphone so that I can be home. And it took a lot of work, but I'll tell you what, realizing that traveling that much for work was making it hard to cultivate those warm relationships, that was a huge wake-up call, because on the surface, it looked like I was having a great time. I was in the waves, but I sure as hell wasn't when it came to the deeper stuff. And I know what you're thinking. Well, Mel, at least you have friends to go back to. What if I don't have any friends or many friends? Well, I would say this. Here's where you can start. Part of warm relationships and happiness is also cultivated by social interactions, the tiny ones you have every single day. Just talk to strangers. This is a great thing to do, by the way. And there's a study that was done by the University of Chicago that you have no clue how happy a random social interaction with a stranger can make you. You kind of inflate in your mind that it's going to be messy to talk to other people, but you underestimate the actual benefits of talking to other people. People who talk to strangers on a train or on a plane or at a bus stop or just at a coffee shop, they're much happier after they talk to the stranger, even if they don't think beforehand that they will be. You know who's great at this? My mother. I was just visiting my mom down in Florida, and when I was little, I used to think it was so annoying, but I now admire this about her. Absolutely everywhere we go, my mom talks to everybody. She talks to everybody about everything. She's constantly commenting on, oh, I like that sweatshirt, or hey, how you doing, or nice day. And people stop and they talk. And next thing you know, they've made a connection, or they're talking about a restaurant recommendation or it's just amazing. And the energy is immediately boosted. And if you're not good at this, here's a great tip. Always compliment somebody's nails. If somebody is waiting on you or standing in front of you in line, or you're sitting next to them, just compliment their nails. If you see somebody reading, ask them what they're reading and if they like it. That's a simple way to compliment somebody, to open up the dialogue, and it always boosts the energy. And one of the things that I'm really concerned about, and I've talked a lot about this on the podcast, and I know the researchers at Harvard are concerned about this too, and that's remote work. Everybody being at home. When we're at home, we miss out on these tiny social interactions with coworkers, with the barista, with the lady at the checkout counter, with the guy that you always see at the grocery store, with the customers that you're used to seeing come into the store. These tiny social interactions go a long way to making you feel warm. So bottom line, relationships, relationships, relationships. Talk to that stranger in line. Push yourself to reach out to people. Text somebody every single day. And don't forget your family. You kind of put family on the back burner, don't you? Because you think they're always going to be there. Make an effort. There's a lot of people in your family, maybe even cousins you haven't seen in a while, that you have a warm relationship with. I'm prioritizing happiness, which means I'm prioritizing the relationships in my life. But you got to push yourself, okay? Let's make ourselves a promise that we're both going to do this, because you got the research and you now know why it matters. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you, so make sure you subscribe. Mwah.